of the deceased not found as yet. A statement, of course, being called a confession by the so-called killer. Is that going to be enough to nail the role of Aftab, Mr. Sidharth Luthra?
That's absolutely right now, because such a confession is not enough. In fact, there are two important things which I wanted to just highlight. If the father made a complaint, Bombay police, even if they felt they didn't have jurisdiction, should have registered a 0 FIR and then immediately transferred it to Delhi police. So far as this case is concerned, the confession, the narco-analysis test is not really going to be evidence in court, but enough, it's going to give leads to the police. What the police needs to do in this case is to go back and start reconstructing the events, find what are the witnesses, which witnesses will place them last together, the young lady and the young man, and try and scientifically evaluate the refrigerator. If the murder weapon is found, great. If the parts of the body are found, wonderful. But even if they're not, that does not mean it's a hopeless case. There can be other circumstantial evidence, and the fact that the body is not found is not going to necessarily demolish the case. But what it needs is sensitive, scientific, logical, coherent investigation, and not grandstanding. So this release of the confession, the talk of narco-analysis, I would call this grandstanding, because eventually what is going to make a difference in this case between a just result and a shoddy investigation is going to be an attempt to have a scientific, coherent investigation, and that is what is important in this case. So I would say early days, nothing is lost, and I'm hopeful that if the Delhi police performs the way it had done in the Nirbhay case, I'm sure you'll have a logical and a coherent result.
But Mr. Sidharth Luthra, it's a case of its own kind, unless you compare this to Anupama Gulati case in Dehradun, where she had been cut into 72 pieces. I mean, does this look like a sociopath, a man, who has a psychological, mind to be able to cut a body into 35 pieces, store it in a fridge at home and live there and behave normally for over 6 months? And do you think the lapse of time can actually take away a lot of evidence that this case may need in a court of law?
So, two answers. This is not the first time you have incidents where the disposal of the dead body has been done. If you remember the Tandoor case, Sushil Sharma, I think the name was, where the lady was killed and then chopped into pieces and burnt in a tandoor. But the point in all these cases needs to be remembered is that while some parts of the evidence are lost, for example, you talked about the fridge. Now there is DNA, there's RT-DNA, there's a lot more that can be found. There will be some evidence will be lost by lapse of time. For example, messages are retained for 3 months unless you can get the service providers to pull up new messages. But there is enough if logically and coherently looked for. And today, while delay is always beneficial to the accused, in some cases, in such a case it isn't. Now, to answer your last question, whether the man is a psychopath, frankly, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist to be able to answer that. But remember one thing, there are two parts. One is the actual offense, that is how the lady was killed. And the second part is going to be how the body was sought to be disposed of. Now, the manner in which the killing and the disposal took place, disposal is a separate offense that is triable separately, punishable separately. So if he has to be punished, he'll be punished for both.